Hello everybody, it's your Uncle Unit, back with a brand new video. This is one that I've been meaning to make for a very long time. When I first created this channel, I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to take. I knew that I wanted to do something different from my main channel, and I didn't really know what that was. But it seems that my interest in horror films and the Resident Evil video games have come to define this channel, and I've made some pretty well received list videos. In those videos, I've always told you guys that I was interested in hearing some of your recommendations. And I might be a little late to the party, but I did listen. So today I present to you 6 horror films that were recommended by viewers like you. Thank you. Number 6. Train to Busan. Recommended by OK, This is Epic. Train to Busan is a 2016 South Korean action horror movie directed by Young Sang-ho. To briefly sum up the plot, a chemical leak at a biotech plant causes the start of a zombie epidemic that slowly spreads across South Korea. A separated father is taking his daughter to Busan, where her mother lives, which is an hour's train ride from Seoul. As the train departs, chaos erupts, as zombies begin to overrun the train station. An infected woman runs inside the train just before the doors close, and things spiral out of control from there. I really did enjoy this movie. It was a refreshing experience that breathed new life into the monotonous zombie formula. It captures how panic can make monsters of us all, which is extremely relevant today. For decades, movies about the undead have been built on a foundation of fear. However, Train to Busan takes that a step further by building on the idea that even in our darkest hour, we need to look out for each other, and those who climb over the weak to save themselves are the ones who will suffer in the end. It takes its time setting up the groundwork, but it eventually launches into an intense action-packed experience, never losing sight of its characters. It's beautifully paced and constructed, with just the right balance of character development and suspense. Number 5. The Dead. Recommended by Bryson Hollis. The Dead was released in 2010 and was written and directed by Howard and John Ford. It was shot in 35mm film, which gives it a very classic look and feel. The story is fairly simple. An American military engineer washes up on the coast of West Africa after his plane crashes. He then teams up with a local soldier named Daniel, who is trying to get to his son. The two join forces and try to stay alive in zombie-infested, war-torn Africa. This is not a Hollywood production, so this film cleverly uses its resources. Excellent makeup effects, great camera work, and an intense sound design. It gives this movie an edge not found in most modern zombie movies. The film's West African setting also is a welcome change from the normal, busy city streets and urban environments. It has a very competent, naturalistic visual style, and the on-location filming gives it an eerie, realistic feel. The costume design appears authentic, and I'll add that the zombies in this film actually feel like a threat, and not a gimmick. Whenever I watch this movie, I find myself comparing it to the Lucio Fulci classics, Zombie and The Beyond. Due to the constraints of the production, there is very little dialogue, but the acting all around is of a high caliber. With fitting performances from both Rob Freeman and Prince David Osei, The Dead gives the viewer a much-needed solid piece of realistic zombie entertainment with a touch of classic filmmaking. Number 4. Alice Sweet Alice, recommended by Marco the Destroyer. Alice Sweet Alice is an often overlooked slasher film from 1976. It was directed by Alfred Soule, who also wrote the film's screenplay along with Rosemary Ritvo. The story starts on the day of Karen Spage's first communion. Young Karen is savagely murdered by an unknown assailant in a yellow raincoat and a creepy translucent mask. Karen's bereaved parents are forced to confront the possibility that Karen's wayward sister, Alice, might be responsible for the killing. What keeps Alice Sweet Alice fascinating is how unshakably ambitious it is regarding its characters. All of the grieving adults spiral out of control, snapping at one another without the slightest concern for each individual's grieving process, which is something that I imagine most people can relate to on some level. Alfred Soule, the director, shot Alice Sweet Alice in his hometown of Paterson, New Jersey, during the summer of 1975. The lived-in quality of the numerous ratty apartments comes from the director being familiar with his surroundings. Alice Sweet Alice touches on some very sensitive topics, such as child psychology and how religion can bring a negative influence into a troubled household. Number 3. Shocker, recommended by Hay Jones. Shocker was directed by the late Wes Craven, the man responsible for classics such as Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street. A mass murderer named Horace Pinker, played by Mitch Pileggi, is executed by the state after a killing spree in a Los Angeles suburb. After being sent to the electric chair, the serial killer uses electricity to make a deal with the devil to come back from the dead and carry out his vengeance on the football player who turned him in.
Like that, Jonathan! No more Mr. Nice Guy!
At first glance, Shocker gives us a suspenseful, stylish, and blood-drenched ride, with action and sick humor, but the film eventually devolves into a sloppy, goofy, but charming thriller. The film gets a bit too over the top in my opinion, and the result is an enjoyable but jarring film. It's a good thing that this movie came out during the late 80s, especially when the characters start diving in and out of television screens. This film had the blueprint for another Freddy Krueger-esque slasher villain, but it ultimately failed to deliver on that front. It's not a horrible movie, but I would temper your expectations before you give it a watch. It's entertaining in an insane kind of way, if that makes sense. If you like some good old-fashioned 80s cheese, pop this one in. I'll also recommend another movie that came out a few years later called Ghost in the Machine. It's a 1993 horror film that toys around with the same concept, and is a little more grounded. Number 2. REC, recommended by Jinjin Gonzalez. REC is a Spanish horror film written and directed by Yama Balaguedo and Paco Plaza. The film was remade in Hollywood with the title Quarantine a year after its release. The film, which was originally released in Spain in 2007, is regarded to be one of the movies that popularized the found footage horror genre. The film opens with a reporter named Angela Vidal, played by Manuela Velasco, and her off-screen cameraman named Pablo, as they film their documentary series titled While You're Sleeping. During filming at a firehouse, a call comes in about an old woman who is trapped in her apartment and screaming. The television crew follows the firefighters to an apartment building, where the police are waiting. Police officers, accompanied by the television crew, confront the old woman, who becomes aggressive and attacks one of the officers. As they carry the injured officer downstairs, they find that the building has been sealed off by the military, trapping everyone inside. This movie cleverly takes the zombie scenario and confines it to 3 floors of narrow staircases and dark apartments. The shaky cam filming adds another layer of suspense and can make things uncomfortable. This is the kind of movie that sticks with you long after you've watched it. The experience, the feeling, atmosphere, and suspense of this movie are brilliantly executed. It goes from a quiet, even boring documentary from a cheap local television show to an atmosphere full of tension, which is why REC isn't just another forgotten found footage horror film. Number 1. Hell Night, recommended by Darkest Fugue. Hell Night is a 1981 slasher directed by Tom DeSimone and written by Randy Feldman. Hell Night stars Linda Blair, who is most known for her role in the horror masterpiece, The Exorcist. The film opens up with a college costume party. It's the early 80s, and of course, everyone is dancing, drinking, and there's not a single smartphone in sight. The party is celebrating the initiation of 4 college pledges, who will be forced to stay the night at an abandoned mansion, once owned by a man named Ramon Garth, who murdered his wife and 3 deformed children before taking his own life. Unsurprisingly, this is all just a scheme to prank the pledges. However, things do not go according to plan, as an unknown assailant emerges from the shadows and begins to pick off the college students one by one. Hell Night perfects the slasher formula, with jump scares, an intense story, and gruesome kill scenes. The main star of the film, Linda Blair, adds a certain authenticity to the production. They could have easily went with some no-name actress for this film, but they opted with someone who is considered a horror icon, which makes this film stand out from the many other slashers that came out in the same year. Hell Night won't blow your mind, but it's a very enjoyable early 80s slasher, and what more could you ask for?
Pray for day.
Thanks for watching. A shout out to everybody who recommended these films to me. I can honestly say that I did enjoy each of them, some more than others, but that's how it goes. If you guys have any more recommendations for me, please leave them in the comments below, and who knows, maybe they'll end up in another countdown video. 2 years from now. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm your Uncle Unit, and I'll see you in the next video.